Hello, New Song English Ministry. We're glad that you're joining us today. We hope that you're doing well during this time, but we want to go into the Word, and we hope that we can encourage you with the Word of God today. We're going to be going into 1 Samuel chapter 16, and for this week and next week, we're going to be splitting this chapter up. So please stick with us, follow through, remember the points from this week, and then let it lead into the next week for the message. Right now, we're going into 1 Samuel 16, and a little bit of background is in this passage, what we see is Samuel, the prophet of God, is going to Saul, who is the current king. And what happens is Saul, he sins against God. He doesn't follow God. He follows the people. He listens to the people in the world, and he follows them, and he seeks to please them. And what ends up happening is God rejects Saul. In that moment, God rejects Saul, and he calls to Samuel and tells him to share this with Saul. Tells Saul, the prophet of God, to tell the king of Israel that he has been rejected by God. This is a very disturbing and hard to handle news. And the previous passage even shares that Samuel, the prophet, was actually distraught. He was angry, and he cried to God all night for this news. But Saul understands. He sees the sin in his heart, and God takes Samuel to go find the next king. Even in that moment, Samuel is very worried. If he goes and Saul were to hear about this, what would happen to Samuel? Would Samuel's life be on the line? And he's afraid and he's fearful. In the plan that God is orchestrating, Samuel becomes fearful of what is going to happen. But he goes. He listens to God, and he goes to Jesse the Bethlehemite. And he seeks and looks after the next king. And this is where I want us to focus on this passage. In 1 Samuel 16, verse 7, it says, "But the Lord said to Samuel, do not look on his appearance or on the height of his stature, because I have rejected him. For the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the hearts." Samuel goes to Jesse, and he calls him to bring all of his sons, and he's going to go one by one and figure out which one is the one that God is trying to call. As he goes through each son, he finds and sees that none of them are the right one. None of them are the ones that God is looking to anoint. And at the very end, Samuel turns to Jesse, and knowing that God cannot be wrong, asks, where is there another son? Is there another son that Jesse has forgotten? And Jesse explains that there is one more, his youngest, David, who is a shepherd. Now, the idea of a shepherd is in that time, that wasn't a very highly sought after position or profession. So he was probably very lowly in the rankings of the sons. He was also the youngest. So no one thought that God would probably choose from him. So when Jesse brought all of his sons out, he just forgot and left David out. Samuel calls to Jesse and asks him to bring David out. And when David comes out, they find that he was the one that God was looking for. David was the one that God was seeking to anoint as the next king, the youngest, the shepherd. In this time, what we find is that we're looking at the world. Us as Christians that live in this world, we look at the world, we look at people's stature, we look at how the situation is going on, we look at people and the movements of their decisions, and we worry and we stress and we rely on their response. But in the midst of all of this, where is our heart? Because that is where God looks. God doesn't look on the outward appearance, but he looks at the heart. He doesn't look at how the world moves. He doesn't look at how people are reacting to certain situations, but he looks at the heart. New Song English Ministry, I want you to take some time, look at your heart. Where is your heart during this time? How is your heart reacting to the news and the circumstances? Are we fearful like Samuel? Are we dejected like Saul? Or are we pure, looking to God during this time? As a people of community, as a people of a body, we clearly need one another. That when we are struggling, we have people who can call us out, who can share and lead us and guide us back to God to set our hearts right with Him. During this time, I ask that we would come together through the Word, through prayer, through community, through online video chatting, that we would stay as one body, and that we could set our hearts on God and align with Him. Let us not be a people who looks at the outward circumstances and the other people's responses, but let us be a people who looks to God and God alone. New Song English Ministry, let's continue to look to God, trust Him, and lean on Him alone. Hope that you guys can stay safe, wash your hands, and we'll see you Sunday.